Hello everyone, welcome back to Croc Creek Brewery. Thank you for joining me today. Today we have a very special video, a tutorial of a recipe of my own creation. Today we're going to be making lemon lime wine. This is a wine that has become a staple in my winemaking cabinet. I always have at least a couple gallons going at a time. It's a wonderful wine. It tastes very similar to hard lemonade or a margarita, and it tastes very good carbonated. So when I make a batch of lemon lime wine, I almost always have half of my batch carbonated and half of my batch cold crashing in the fridge. Both ways it tastes amazing. So let's get into it. So we're going to be making 2 gallons today. A 2-gallon batch. We're going to be using 6 limes and 6 lemons. So if you're going to be making this in a 1-gallon batch, I would suggest using 3 lemons and 3 limes. We're also going to be using 6 cups of sugar today. So that is 3 cups of sugar per gallon. We're going to be using Red Star active dry bread yeast. We're going to be using 2 teaspoons today. That's 1 teaspoon per gallon. We also have our mixer is attached to my power drill because today we're going to be using whole fruits. And if you've seen any of my recent videos, I've started using my power drill to mix together the sugars and the water first before I add my sugar, and mix it continuously with my power drill to make sure I get all of the sugar incorporated into my brew so that I get a proper accurate reading with my hydrometer. Speaking of which, we have our hydrometer and our graduated cylinder. Those are a necessity. One different tool we're going to be using today is a juicer. This is an old-fashioned bowl juicer for all of our fruits. It might take us a little while to juice 6 lemons and 6 limes with this, but that's all right. And of course, we have our fermenting vessel. This is my homemade brew bucket I made the other day. This is going to be perfect for this recipe because I usually cut my lemons and limes into 1/8 to fit into my glass carboy. And the problem I've run into is that it usually clogs up my carboy, and I have an overflow, an explosion. I have to add a blow-off tube to my glass carboy. It's just not fun to have to babysit your brew all the time to make sure it doesn't spill off into your cabinet on your countertop. So with this 2-gallon fermentation bucket, we will have no problems whatsoever adding whole fruit. Okay. So let's get started. First, we're going to go ahead and juice all of our lemons and all of our limes. This might take me a while, so I'll probably fast forward through all of this. It's a pretty simple process. We're not going to really press too hard into the juicing because the yeast will get to the juice, it'll get to the sugars in the lemons and limes eventually. So we're just going to go ahead and press down the fruit, not too hard, and get some of the juice out, so that'll add sugars into our primary fermentation. All right, so we've gone ahead and juiced all of our lemons and our limes. Here's our juice here. It's almost filled this cereal bowl full. This is probably about a quarter to a half a cup of lemon and lime juice. We didn't squeeze every last drop out of lemons and limes. These are just lightly squeezed. Like I said, the yeast will get to the sugars in the fruit eventually. I'm not worried about it. The sugars, the juice will be there to add flavoring and sugars to our primary fermentation. That's its sole purpose. So, right now, what we're going to do is take our fermentation vessel, go ahead and add our juice to it. We're going to add all of our sugar, 6 cups worth. And then we're going to fill this up to about 1 gallon. Then we're going to start mixing in our sugars and water. Okay, so there we are. That is about 1 3/4 gallons of water, along with our 6 cups of sugar and our lemon and lime juice. We're going to go ahead and mix this up to go ahead and get all of our sugars dissolved. That way, our sugars do not stick to our whole fruits when we add those to our primary fermentation, so we can get a proper reading with our hydrometer. Alright, so all of our sugar has been dissolved into our lemon and lime juice and 1 3/4 gallons of water. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and add our whole fruits. This is the leftover peels and pulp of our lemons and limes. This will add yeast nutrient to our brew, as well as provide more liquid sugars and flavor to our wine. There we go. All right. And I forgot to mention, in my original ingredients list, we're gonna need about 25 raisins. So this is usually what I use for about a 1 gallon batch, but since we already have the yeast nutrients provided in the skins of our lemons and limes, we don't need to double our raisin content. So 25 raisins, enough for about 1 gallon, should be more than enough for this lemon lime wine. Okay, so that is all of our raisins added. We're going to go ahead and give this one more good stir so that we can incorporate all the whole fruit, lemon and limes and raisins into our brew. All right, so make sure when you're stirring your brew at this stage, you go ahead and stir it very, very vigorously because you want to introduce that oxygen into your brew that the yeast needs to convert the sugar into alcohol. So don't be afraid to get really vigorous with your stirring. We have gone ahead and incorporated our lemons and limes and raisins into the brew. What we're going to do now is go ahead and add our yeast. We are adding in our yeast dry today. We are adding 2 teaspoons of Red Star active dry bread yeast. That should be more than enough to get a very active colony into our brew. And we're going to go ahead and stir that up one more time before we take a hydrometer reading. Alright, so all of our yeast has been totally incorporated into our brew. We need to go ahead and take a hydrometer reading to see how our brew is doing. Let me get our turkey baster. You want to get quite a bit below the fruit line, that way you don't pick up any pulp or seeds. And on a side note, if you see any seeds floating to the top of your brew, go ahead and remove them. The seeds might provide a slight off flavor to your brew that'll be undesirable in the final product. There we go. Okay, so we have a original gravity of 1.082. Now, I have here a leather-bound book that I keep all of my brewing recipes in. Every tutorial I've ever made, every brew I've ever made off camera, I have recorded in this journal. That way, if I ever want to make it again, I know exactly what I used, when I used it, and what the original gravity was, so I can make it again. So here we have our lemon lime wine, and we had an original gravity of 1.080. So we actually have a little higher original gravity than what we had when we first made this wine several months ago. That should still be an alcohol content of about 11%. And that is perfect for this lemon lime wine because this is a great summer drink to have on the front porch during a hot summer day. When we make this carbonated here in a few weeks, this will be an absolutely wonderful wine. All right, let's go ahead and add this back to our brew. We're going to go ahead and place our airlock into our lid. Okay, so from my experience making this wine is usually done in anywhere from 5 days to 10 days. It's a very quick wine to make and it tastes very good, young, right off the bat. So we're gonna check this in about 5 days and see how it's doing. We're gonna rack it off the fruit. Hopefully it should be done by then, and we'll go ahead and degas and bottle it at that point. So, thank y'all for joining me today. I hope y'all have enjoyed this tutorial. Like I said, this is a recipe of my own making. It's a really great summer wine. I hope y'all make it yourselves. Thank y'all for joining me. We'll see y'all in the next one. Bye now.